Welcome to a brand new impromptu-ish episode of Raidercast. In this episode, we're going to be digging up the past. It's something that seems a little unavoidable when it's talking about Tomb Raider, but today I mean it in a more real-world sense rather than something that we do in the games. Recently, two writers who have worked on Tomb Raider in one capacity or another, Gail Simone and Rhianna Pratchett, both of whom have written for the Tomb Raider comics. Rhianna Pratchett has written for the Survivor storyline, and Gail Simone has also written for the revisioned Tomb Raider animated series way back in 2007. They took to Twitter to talk about a very controversial subject, which seems is still very fresh in people's minds, and people have a lot to say on the matter, so I just wanted to make an episode about what people still think about the issue of Lara's father. So Gail took to Twitter to say, here is some free advice to anyone working on Tomb Raider stories, speaking not as a writer but as a fan. Stop making every story about her dad. No one cares about her dad. There's never been an interesting story where her dad is the focus. Thank you. Followed by Rhianna quote tweeting saying, speaking as someone that often gets defined by her dad, I've spoken in interviews about not being a fan of the dad plotline in Rise, but it was dictated from above and I had to make peace with it to do my job. It's a big reason why the comics I worked on were very non-dad focused. Rhianna has actually spoken a little bit more in depth about that in a previous episode of Raidercast, which I highly recommend you checking out. Anyway, I took to Instagram with screenshots of this conversation saying, this conversation has started again, and it has spread like wildfire across Twitter with people getting very angry and very passionate. And it's been a while now. It's been a while since, let's be honest, it's been a while since Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and currently we don't know what's coming next. But I asked people what they thought of it, and I didn't expect to get the reaction I did. I got a lot of comments. So I wanted to actually go through them with you. Whew. There's some very passionate, fiery people out there. I'm going to keep all of these anonymous. So here are some of your thoughts on Lara's father's storylines. Let's dive in. As a disclaimer, I don't want to say that this is what the general consensus is about the father storyline in the past. This is literally just the answers that I've got. There are many people out there with completely different views. So let's listen to what these people say. Absolutely dislike. Good start. Dislike, not every strong female needs to be defined by a man, especially her dad. This seems to be the crux of many people's issues, is how Lara is defined and how she is presented in the story. I agree, Lara is at her best when she is not defined by her dad, or even her mum. So it's not even necessarily just an issue with the father, it is a parental higher authority over Lara rather than her being independent. I liked the storyline once, disliked it the fourth time they told a different story about him. And this is a good point. This raises a good point that we've had this story recycled in some form or another since 2001 with Angelina Jolie's first Tomb Raider movie, which actually starred her dad, followed by the Legend storyline, the reboot storyline, and even a different one in the new Tomb Raider movie. Not to mention, I'm sure there's even different ones in the comics as well, there's bound to be. Not bothered by it, but it's not the main point on a Tomb Raider story, as before she should walk on her own shoes. It was fun for a while, but it's just repetitive now, so I hope they go a different route for the next story. Fucking hate it! Dislike, I think it shows a lack of creativity of how to have a strong female stand on her own. I think it's done now, the story is at a natural finish, so we should just leave it. I enjoyed the first Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider movie, disliked it for the games. So some people have a difference of opinion between the films and the games, some enjoyed it in one but not the other. Dislike it especially after so many times. In general, I don't want every story to be connected all the time. Fair enough. I liked him when he was mentioned in the manual of the Tomb Raider 1 game, not much afterwards. Of course, in the Tomb Raider 1 manual, he was under the name Henshingley, fancy name, not Richard, and that talked about how Lara's parents disowned her because of her lifestyle. It's fine for one story, but then move on from it and allow her to grow. That's an interesting point, and I have not actually considered what this is doing to Lara. As a character, not necessarily in the narrative, but as a character, we seem to keep looping around over the last... Oh my god, it's been 16 years. Okay, whew, feel old now. It was okay the first times, but now we need something different. Lara's more than just her dad. I dislike it. It was right to include him in the first Angelina movie, but enough. Poop emoji, no dad please. I wasn't bothered by the story, it was okay in the beginning, but a bit overdone. So many other stories we could tell with Lara. I agree, I think so too. Absolutely dislike. Lara is a Raider because she wants to be, not because of her parents. Again, circling round to the issue of Lara's identity and her motivations. What makes her who she is? Is it someone else? Is it her own goals and drives? It's absolutely about Lara. That's what we're here for, not her dad. Lara was a strong character on her own with her own motivations. There was never a need for daddy issues. It's so generic and overplayed. It was alright once, but it's getting tired now. I'd like to see her badass nature be her motive instead. Why not? First time used in Angelina movie was okay, but why bother reboot a story and make it the same over and over again? Again, with the cyclical pattern of always having Lara go through this journey to find out what happened to her parents, only to reboot the series and start it again. Over it, it's been done too much. Enough of the entire family plotlines, it's been 20 goddamn years. I think it could have been handled better. It's a very diplomatic answer. I liked it in the first film because it was new and strictly tied to the plot of the Illuminati, but after that... I dislike it. It's like it's a way to give drama to a rich girl so she can suffer and be relatable, in quotes. Dislike, but I'm not really into the new Tomb Raiders. Fair enough, each to their own. I didn't hate it, but it felt a bit tired. It felt like they'd recycled the 2001 movie storyline. Big dislike. It's okay as a reference bit of backstory, such as what happened in Tomb Raider 1 and Tomb Raider 4, but not as a major plot driver. Bye, Dad. It was good for maybe one story, but it's overdone now. I enjoyed it in Legend and Anniversary. Not necessarily that it gave her a reason to be a Tomb Raider. I enjoyed it for Rise, but not Shadow. Make it more about Lara now, please. Now that's an interesting point. You don't often hear people differentiate the father aspect between stories within the reboot series. I like that comment, that's quite interesting. For this trilogy, we could have Lara more explore the family plot, but now it's time to move forward. Disliked, the original Tomb Raider story arc, her entire passion for raising tombs was hers, not because of her dad. Her parents abandoned her because of her chosen life. She stood on her own 2 feet and went it alone. I hate the new storyline because it implies her independent personality is dependent on a man. Can we stop having a strong woman be the way because of a man? I liked it in the beginning, in the Legend trilogy, but after that it was always some kind of weird unsolved Oedipus, and it's annoying. There's a lot of cool motivations, even in the classic 6. Her father, Henshingley, not Richard, appears just a little at Lara's funeral in Tomb Raider Chronicles. It's true. Her parents have been present in every incarnation of her character. There's no denying that. Even the fact that they abandoned Lara is still inclusion of them within her past storyline, and they are formative in her life in one way or another. I initially liked it for the movie, but let Lara move forward of her own volition. Hate it. Dislike, I loved how classic Lara was so independent and on the edge between heroine and anti-heroine. Dislike, I actually enjoyed the search for her mum instead, and the closure she gets. I never minded it in the Legend trilogy, but started to despise it in the Survivor trilogy. In my opinion, there is too much focus on how her father is her motivation. There's a lack of agency on herself. I liked it in the film, fresh and original take. Disliked it in every installment following, including the new film. It worked in Legend, but it got quite annoying by the end of the reboot trilogy. I never used to mind it, but it's run its course now. Let's focus on Lara. I dislike it. After the Legend trilogy, I would have preferred if the reboot built on the origins from Tomb Raider 1. This person then took to DMs to clarify their answer. They say, I felt like the Legend trilogy already had a big focus on Lara's family, would have preferred they focus more on the original story from the Tomb Raider 1 manual. There's a lot that can be built from just a small paragraph, since we never heard about this in any of her past adventures. In terms of backstory, the Survivor trilogy doesn't work because somehow it manages to be too similar to the Legend trilogy in films, and at the same time, too different. It just feels like a what-if scenario or a dream sequence, and while I appreciate the idea of a unified timeline, I feel that they will try to cherry-pick important moments from every game and add it to the current backstory. It means that even if the focus is on her adventures, there will always be family issues in the background. Think about how Tomb Raider 1's plot changed for Anniversary. They absolutely need to leave the dad thing in the past. It's been done, it worked with Angelina. Always disliked that storyline. Tired and annoyed, get back to the notion that her parents disowned her. Mystery equals interest. I think it worked in the films and Legend, but I really dislike it in the Survivor games. I dislike it because it's gone on too long. Not too keen, wish it was about the places Lara goes to more than her family. A bit of family drama made her more relatable, but it should have stopped after Legend trilogy. Loved it, to be honest. There we go, it's not all bad. It's okay, but they should stop using him as a crutch. I only liked it in the first film. It was unique since it was Angelina's real dad. So fed up with dad, and was gutted when the opening of the new film was dad. Core's Tomb Raider was based on Lara's independence and rebellion. Get rid of the dad storyline. I bloody hated it. Followed immediately by another comment saying, hate it! I wasn't bothered in Legend and 2013. However, in Rise and Shadow I got a bit bothered, but nothing extreme in my opinion. Not too bothered, but I'd prefer it if they just went the classic route of wanting to find adventure. Not bothered right away. Good characters come from somewhere, but it was dragged on. I'm not bothered by it. If it tells a compelling story, then I don't mind. It didn't really bother me. Her dad died, that's traumatic. She wants to feel closer to him. Daddy Croft was fine. Thirsty people. Strong dislike, it takes Lara's agency from her. It was good to have a bit of background, but we love Lara for Lara, not her father. No, I think I completely agree with that. Total dislike, preferred when she did it for her passion and enjoyment. It was more compelling. Not thrilled they took this direction, but definitely learned to see it as another side of Lara. I surprised myself by actually completely agreeing with that one as well. It's something that, yes, I agree it has been done to death, but it does present another side to Lara. We're not just always getting necessarily the same story. The Legend trilogy and the reboot trilogy tackled things from different angles, and it brought out different parts of Lara's personality, and I can appreciate that for sure. Disliked, the focus should be on Lara or the relics. I didn't mind it in Shadow, but I definitely like a change. I found it problematic, a cliche, and just unnecessary. It ruined the series when it became first about her mother and then about her dad. Extreme dislike, why does Lara's existence have to be justified by the presence of a man? It's infuriating. Henchingly Croft disowned her for non-conformity. What more story do we need? Badass, not baggage. Bin the dad. I didn't mind it as I grew up with the Legend trilogy, but after hearing how it makes others feel, I can understand. Not only this, but I completely agree, even though I may love the series. So over it, we need a new word for over. I dislike the dad narrative. What's wrong with a woman having her own motivations? I didn't mind it in Shadow, but I definitely like a change. Rise was straight out of a soap opera. Anna's character, her dad, dreadful. Not bothered, didn't notice it to be fair, but I liked it when her mum was the focus. Disliked. And finally, in isolation I enjoyed it, but it's been a narrative thread in every recent game and film. Whew. So you can see, people are still really, really passionate about this. It draws out a lot of feelings from people, and not even just from one side of the argument. You see people on both sides who either really didn't mind it, people really hated it, some people loved it. Granted, not much of that was positive, not much at all, but as one person said, it does give us another aspect of Lara. And I think, as well as exploring really cool ancient myths and stories and artifacts and relics, yeah, of course we can explore Lara along the way. Personally, yes, I do hope that the next story steers considerably clearer from a family point of view than the last 6 main games. But I also agree with what somebody else said, in that when it comes to the unification, I do believe that the Survivor storyline will be the basis of her origins. And I think that after that, anything that happened throughout the other games will be fitted in, sometimes vaguely, sometimes just little plot points here and there, that eventually, maybe in a future game, she will sort of reference, like, oh yeah, well, I was on the run in Paris one time, or oh, I don't want to go back to Egypt, I had a traumatic experience in Egypt. Just little nuggets of allusions to her past. But what's that going to do to her motivation? Because we've had this entire fleshed out storyline in the Survivor trilogy. And I do think that they will use that aspect of the parents' storyline. What that's going to do to retelling aspects of the Legend trilogy, I don't know, because the two stories don't knit together very well at all. They have similarities, for sure, but we'll see. But I do think that the large portion of whatever comes in the future about her parents and her dad in particular will come from the Survivor storyline. But even so, it's important to note that everyone is a fan of Tomb Raider because of Lara, in some way or another. Whether you prefer the classic one or the Legend one or the Survivor, it's Lara. It's the same name. In every aspect, it's this strong, defiant woman who's taking us through these stories, who fights against the odds. Sometimes she is the power fantasy, sometimes she is fighting against overwhelming odds, but she is still surviving. That's why she's called the Survivor. Survivor trilogy, Survivor Lara. But yeah, I did not expect that kind of fan reaction from an Instagram poll. There were so many comments. Really, really grateful that everyone shared their opinion. And if you still have opinions to voice, feel free in the comments under the YouTube video, or find me on Twitter or anywhere else. Continue the conversation. I'm sure other people will in the comments as well. I hope everyone is staying safe.